When thinking of the character action genre, for me, Devil May Cry is the first thing that always comes to mind. Even before I started playing any of the games, DMC was really the first thing I think of whenever I hear the word action or hack and slash. Hence why when I finally got around to trying around the genre, the first game that I played was Devil May Cry. And I liked it. I can enjoy the combat fine enough, but there were a lot of things that I felt were really dated and hampered my enjoyment of the game. And then I just quit after Mission 11, tried out DMC 3, I moved on, and never looked back. Until recently, where I've been curious on how my opinion would be if I give it a second shot. So I decided to treat myself playing it. And now, we're gonna talk about my current stance on the game. After playing more character action games, how do I feel about going back to what's essentially the founding father of this genre? Well, that's what this video is about. So strap in as I tell you how I learned to appreciate.
Let's rock, baby.
After the incredibly stylish title screen and high-octane action scene, you might expect the first mission to be chock full of action, but in actuality, it takes a while before you even come across a single enemy. This is something that I didn't like when I first started playing, but I actually learned to appreciate it when revisiting this game. It may not be what you came here for, and I completely understand if you don't like it, but there's something that I just really enjoy about the atmosphere that this gives, how you're traversing through this complicated castle with a lot of layers, or how this acts as a reminder of this game's roots as a cancelled RE4. Although, if we're talking about the remnants of RE game design here, there are a lot of things that I like here that really makes this game unique. The blend of some of Resident Evil's tropes combined with the stylish action flair is something that I adore here. However, if there's one thing that I don't like here, it's the fixed camera angle. Fixed camera angles can work well to build up suspense in a survival horror game, but they absolutely do not work well in an action game like this, especially when you're trying to look stylish and avoid damage, and then whoops, suddenly something that you can't see coming just pops in on screen and damages you. Yes, it was my fault that I wasn't able to see that coming. To be clear, I don't mind these camera angles in exploration, but when I'm in combat, it just gets in the way most of the time. That of course leads to the combat itself, and well, it has definitely shown its age. I don't mean to say that in a bad way though. It plays very well, and for the most part, I enjoyed it. It has that sort of simplistic charm to it. When comparing it to future games, well, it isn't even comparable in the slightest. It's definitely interesting to go back to this combat system where you only have 2 melee weapons with a few combos, some guns, and that's it. From having 4 styles, 4 weapons, and 3 guns that you can switch on the fly and go combo map with. Yeah, it can be pretty relaxing to play DMC1 in a sense. Although, that calm feeling will not last long because this game can be very hard. But let's get back to that later. Let's get back to the combat here for a sec because there is actually some depth here. Different combos and moves are suited better for certain situations. You can buy new moves in the shop. The Devil Trigger is a sort of power boost that is actually so well thought out. Alistair is overall very fun to use. The combos never get old. And while Ifrit is not as fun to use, as it's a bit too slow for my liking, it can pack some punch, especially when charged and or when using DT. Getting back to what I just said a few moments ago though, as most of you probably already know, this game can get pretty challenging sometimes. I mean, this is pretty much a tradition with the franchise by now, and it all started with this game. And let me tell you, when DMC1 is at its best, it tests the player with fun and fair challenges that always keeps, at least me, engaged. Whether it be facing a horde of marionettes, or fighting some of the game's best bosses, like Phantom or Nello Angelo. I did mention specifically when the game is at its best, because, well, this game can get kinda messy. Let's start with the enemies and mini-bosses. Some of my favorite enemies include Marionettes, Fetishes, Cyclops, and Blade, with my favorite mini-boss being Shadow. Aside from Marionettes, who are mainly combo fodders and there to increase your style rank, all of the other enemies that I mentioned, while a bit different, share one thing in common. They all require some sort of strategy to fight, or at least pay attention to what they're doing. But they're not too annoying to hit to the point where they can go through walls and all that, or move around in an annoying manner. Yeah, okay, no need to hide it. I hate it when enemies go through wall, making it impossible for you to hit. It doesn't really create suspense, you just sorta wait there until you can jump slash and then that's it. Oh yeah, and some enemies like the nobodies are just annoying to hit with a melee weapon, but become a pushover with the grenade gun, so that's fun. So enemy design for me is a 50-50 overall. Like some things and didn't like some other things. But what about the bosses? Well, I've already mentioned the good bosses, so there's practically nothing else for me to talk about here other than the stuff that I don't like. Griffin hurts my thumb, Nightmare is a nightmare to fight, and I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's move on to another topic now, shall we? One of the first things that you'll see when combat starts would be these words that would appear on screen once you start attacking. These are your style rankings, and these, well, they're supposed to be an incentive to be stylish in combat, but in practice, I gotta say that they really missed the mark here. The only thing that you need to do to maintain a high star rank is to constantly attack the enemy. If you take too long, the star rank goes down. Oftentimes, this just leads me to spamming attacks with no real strategy, and that's not so stylish, is it? And then there are also the mission rankings, which grades you on your performance on each mission, going from S to D. You'd think that the star rankings would affect the end mission rankings, but no, at least not directly. The end stage rankings are affected by three things: stage clear time, orb count, and the amount of times you take damage. The orb count that enemies drop will increase if your style ranking is higher, thus encouraging you to be stylish. And by that, I mean spam the million stabs. So they do affect your end mission rank, just again, not directly. I really like the mission ranking system here, as it encourages you to get those high style rankings, but at the same time, be strategic and avoid damage, and be fast while doing all of that. You can get away with a little spamming, I guess, but skill is definitely required, and skill is already required for beating the game, and the ranking system rewards skillful play even more, as not only is it intrinsically satisfying to get a high rank, extrinsically, you also get more bonus orbs after finishing a mission the higher your rank is, which lets you buy more upgrades and items. Future games will refine the ranking system, but overall, it's still pretty good. Now, let's talk about the missions that you are ranked in, specifically the level design of them. The level design of DMC1 is truly what sets this game apart from other games in the franchise. I already talked about how I enjoyed the overall atmosphere that the game gives, and this extends to the level design of the game. You're traversing through a mysterious castle, and this does give off some Resident Evil vibes, albeit less scary. Malay Island, the location where this game takes place, is kind of a character in and of itself. It's hard to describe, but if you've played this game, you'd probably know what I'm trying to say here. And in terms of the actual level design, well, there are more exploration and platforming challenges compared to the future games, and while some of these can get boring, and the platforming can get pretty annoying sometimes, this game has such a great atmosphere that I kind of enjoy just walking around from place to place, even when the main focus of the game is combat. And finally, the final thing that I want to talk about regarding the gameplay is the life and item system of this game. This game has a limited life system, and I'm not a big fan of it. Getting close to beating a boss and then having to go back all the way to the beginning of the mission if you don't have yellow orbs can be a demotivator. I much prefer the gold orb system future games use, or the checkpoint system, but I digress. And then there are also some other items in the game, such as healing items like the Vital Star, an item to refill your Devil Trigger in the form of the purple stars, and other items, such as the Holy Water being basically a screen new. Other games would make you use items strategically and all that to get a higher rank, but in this game, items do not affect your ranking at all. So as long as you have them, spam Holy Water all you want. The added punishment and balancing in future games is definitely an improvement in this category, no doubt. That's basically all I have to say for the gameplay, so how about some other stuff? Well, the soundtrack is pretty catchy, my two favorite songs being the graphics are pretty good for the time, the story is okay, pretty basic but serviceable, and the presentation for said story is, well,
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
it's a product of its time. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on this game, so let's just wrap it up, I guess. Well,
It looks like we have a winner.
Jackpot.
Well, that was a short one. The title of this video is Learning to Appreciate Devil May Cry, not learning to love it or something like that because, well, I didn't end up loving the game. I ended up appreciating it as a pioneer of the genre and was able to get into the gameplay more after giving it a second shot. I obviously still didn't like some things about the game, but overall, yeah, it was a good one. I think what I said at the end of my stream of this game perfectly encapsulates my current opinion on this game. Devil May Cry, it was a fun time. I know I've said some negative things about this game, but overall, it's not as good as later entries, and I'm not sure I'm gonna be going back to this one anytime soon, but it's still a pretty good game overall. It basically birthed the entire character action genre into 3D, and I can't respect it enough for that. Even with some of the design shortcomings and all that, I will always respect this game, and there's no other game like it, not even in its own franchise. There's no other game that captures the same feeling and atmosphere as this game. And that's why, despite not really loving the game, it'll always hold a special place in my heart. But yeah, that's what I have to say.